the best of the week on Relevant Radio.
We're greatly encouraged and filled with hope and resolve. Lives are being saved. Yeah, we'll have a setback here and there. Every human rights struggle does, but we are undeterred. We will not give up.
That's the powerful voice of Representative Chris Smith. Don't let setbacks get you down. He's going to be joining me in just a moment here. He was at the March for Life. Look, gosh, this election year, it's going to bring us all kinds of politicking and political games. It's also going to bring us another year of talking about the political role of abortion. And the Biden campaign set off on a bus tour starting from Milwaukee. Of course, that was headed by the Vice President Kamala Harris. Of course, this whole administration has done nothing but push for a culture of death. And in fact, the last year, the president's campaign manager announced that they're going to make this issue, right, abortion, what a macabre issue, right, to make it the number one issue on the campaign trail. What does that say about who you are, what you represent, what your party is, that you're going to champion a culture of death? I don't get it. CBS, right, they say, they have a recent poll. It shows that 57% of Americans believe that abortion should be legal in all or most cases. A majority of Americans? I'll tell you, if that's the case, we are a nation that is in peril. We are a nation that is doomed. We got to get that right. It doesn't square with just to give you some hope here, doesn't square with the Knights of Columbus Marist poll. They just did a poll that came out. You know what it shows? And again, maybe CBS is just biased, right? I don't know what the parameters were for that. The Knights of Columbus Marist poll says 2/3 say abortion should be restricted after the first 3 months. So let me share with you a little bit of hope as well. Another very powerful clip here from our friend Representative Smith from New Jersey, calling out the federal government and the current administration on this macabre, pro-death agenda.
At least 25 states now have statutes that are either in effect or being litigated that protect life. My own state is one of the bad ones. We have abortion till birth, but we won't quit in New Jersey either and try to overturn a law that was passed by our governor and by the legislature. This week, 2 new important pro-life bills authored by 2 courageous lawmakers, Michelle Fischbach and Ashley Hinson, passed the House. We're working, and we're working for the babies and their mothers. Tragically, President Biden, the abortion president, has weaponized the entire federal bureaucracy to aggressively promote abortion on demand, including a full-court press to force taxpayers to pay for it. Last Congress, President Biden's absolute support was for this, to say, and House Democrats passed this not once, but twice, legislation to enable and authorize abortion right up to the moment of birth. Think of it, all 9 months, and that baby can be killed. And that's Biden's view. That extremist legislation poses an existential threat to countless women and to children. The Biden administration and some governors and lawmakers, including in the House and Senate, continue to smear and misrepresent the noble work of pregnancy care centers, and we can't let that happen either. We will never, and I know so many of you, especially over the years, we will never, with the grace of God, never quit in our defense for the weakest and the most vulnerable. Thank you.
Amen. That was Congressman Chris Smith. He was at the March for Life today, and that's where the Democrats stand on the issue. What about the Republicans? I know this is tough. It's a little harder to tell. Donald Trump, of course, leads the polls, but he has blamed a strong pro-life stance on Republican congressional and statewide candidates losing in 2022, losing at the polls. Nikki Haley, I think it was at the first or second one of the debates, she said the same thing. She's reported to never have defended U.S. public policy while she was an ambassador. Where's the party going? Senator Marco Rubio from Florida, he put out a 4-page letter yesterday outlining pro-life policies he thinks the party should pursue. And they all, to me, when I went through it, seemed to make sense. So how do we shake this out? Whether you're Democrat or Republican, this is an issue that fractures parties on both sides. I'm joined right now by Congressman Chris Smith, a longtime representative from New Jersey's 4th District, a pro-life stalwart, as you just heard. And it's great to have him here with me today. Congressman, thank you for your time.
Oh, thank you, Drew. Thanks for having me on.
So, I know you've been a defender of life, the unborn. I know you've been a champion for the Uyghurs and for so many others. What is it about the life issue? I mean, I really got the midterms wrong. How do you see where the candidates stand, whether it's Nikki Haley or Donald Trump or even the Biden administration? How critical is their stance on life when it comes to votes?
Well, I think it's very, very important. And those who are finding a little trouble finding their voice need to rethink, walking the other way or turning their back on an entire group of individuals who are being slaughtered. 65.5 million unborn babies have been killed since 1973. And that equates to every man, woman, and child living in England, for example, or Italy, even more so. It's a massive loss of children's lives. I just left a forum where there were 7 women who are survivors of abortion. They survived. They were the babies who were intended to be killed. And they spoke so eloquently about we're the face of what the abortionist is trying to violently kill through dismemberment or chemical poisoning, salt, whatever it might be. And they survived. And there are many, many survivors. Unfortunately, the abortionist is often so good at their very dark trade that the babies do die. And I even pointed out in my comments at the forum that I'll never forget there was a famous, incisive, and it was a very well-written piece by the Philadelphia Inquirer 40 years ago called The Dreaded Complication. And it talked about how the abortionists would lament the fact that a baby would survive and maybe even go on to be adopted. And that's what led to developing such horrible things like partial birth abortion and other hideous methods, in that case, draining out the brain of a child, sucking it out so that there's no chance of a baby surviving. I mean, this is gruesome stuff. It's violence in the extreme. And, that cavalcade, whatever it is that Biden's going to be doing, that's a funeral. It's a funeral for babies. It's a funeral for mothers to defend life. And, Biden himself at least used to be against funding for abortion and claim that abortion funding, when you pay for it and subsidize it, is bad for the mother and it's bad for the child. And now he's, for politics and genuflecting to what he thinks is, a political positive thing to do, he is for abortion for all 9 months and is pushing a bill that every Democrat except one in the House voted for twice to permit abortion right up at the moment of birth. That is to say, 9 months, complete authorization to kill that baby. That is child abuse in the extreme, and it also wounds the mother, sometimes takes their lives, but so often wounds them so deeply. And that's so underappreciated and underreported as to the deleterious effects to women as well. So I think party members on the Republican side need to find their voice, not be afraid, bend into the wind if it seems like that's what needs to be done. But I think, as the Marist poll underscored once again, is that the people really are with us. They need to hear our voices. There was one question about placing limitations on abortion. This is Marist, and they're very, very good at what they do. 66% of the people want limits. 33% want no limits. So that's the group that wants abortion till birth. They are not a majority of Americans. And when you look at it, the independents tend to be very pro-life. Yep. Democrats, it was evenly split. Republicans was 84-15. But the independents were 66-34. From a purely political calculus, being pro-life is a very, very good place to be. It's the right place to be morally, but it's also a good place to be. And stop running away. And really, we need to make the Democrats accept the burden of being for abortion till birth. Yeah. And don't, just read the bills. I debated both of those bills on the floor, along with a number of my colleagues. And frankly, Drew, they just said, oh, we're misogynistic, we hate women, all this nonsense, when simultaneously they're saying kill the baby, including the girl child, right up until the moment of birth. And, Maris also pointed out, and we've had fights on this in the House, could never get the bill up in the Senate, about sex selection abortion, where an ultrasound is done to determine boy or girl.
Yeah.
And if it's a girl, it's almost always the girl that gets killed.
Wow.
86%
That's wild.
of Americans, 86,
Wow.
want to outlaw that.
Wow.
And yet Planned Parenthood and all the other organizations and the Biden administration is in favor of sex selection abortion. And you know what the consequence has been globally? We're missing as many women in China and it happens here all the time too, but in China and as well as in India, that equates with all the women and girl children living in the United States of America. Every single one of them. 160 plus million have been killed through sex selection abortions, and it's being promoted.
Hey, Congressman, let me get your take on this just quickly, because this is something that's been coming up a lot. As these candidates are trying to position themselves for this presidential run, where do candidates stand? I mean, do some people say we need to soften our position and win the battle in order to win the wars? With lots of battles that will ultimately lead up to the war. And others say, no, we should never compromise and stay firm. Where do you stand on that? And how do you read the wins when it comes to these candidates?
Well, I believe we need to always have clarity. The unborn child is suffering violence in the extreme. Some do survive, but very few. Most are dismembered. They're decapitated. They're beheaded during the process of an abortion. And even the abortion pill, which is well over 50% of the abortions right now, even that, how does it work? I asked some UN leaders the other day, including Secretary General Gutierrez. I had a meeting with him in my office. I said, do you know how the abortion pill, which the UN is pushing very hard, works? It starves the baby to death. Why are we deliberately making the child so malnourished so quickly that he or she dies because of malnourishment? I mean, that's an abortion method. The others are just dismemberment and a few others. It's violence. Yeah. And we should never, ever back off from calling it for what it is. It is violence against children, and it also is so injurious of women. We know the psychological consequences are very real. They're trivialized by the abortion lobby all the time, and they're very good at that, trying to suggest that there's no consequences. And so we need to be very clear, even if we have some setbacks along the way, and we will. Every human rights movement does. But I think people are moving in our direction. And if you look at that Maris poll, we have pretty strong, very strong support for putting limitations on abortion. The Democrat initiative of killing babies till birth is solidly rejected by the American people. So our candidates who are pro-life, be they Republican or Democrat, and they tend to be more Republican than Democrat, they need to just call it the way it is. I mean, what I can't stand about politics are those people who waver, are running away from their position, and whatever that position is, whatever that issue happens to be. Just have a core conviction. Be sensitive to other people's viewpoint, and I certainly am. But when you come to the view, and I've met so many abortion survivors, women who have had abortions and now deeply regret it. Some of them are called Silent No More, and they speak out against it. We have the pregnancy care centers, and even in my speech today, I talked about two women who were literally on their way to an abortion mill in New Jersey, and the pregnancy care center, or pregnancy resource center, as we often call them now, the director was there doing sidewalk counseling gently and very self-effacing, no hard sell, and said, please, will you reconsider? They did. They went to the pregnancy center, got all kinds of help, not just during the pregnancy, but afterwards for years. And then at the banquet that I was at, they spoke, and then two young women, girls, teenagers, spoke. They stood by the podium side by side, and they told the story of how, they're pro-life, and they were talking about sports. Everyone said, oh, this is a good speech. Wow. Then they turned to the director and said, do you realize, had you not been there and had you not persuaded our mothers, we'd be dead.
Wow.
That's what's going on here. There are children, twins, obviously not all twins, some twins. They're being killed by the abortionists, and their mothers hurt. We need to wrap our arms around both, love them both, and to the greatest of our ability to protect them both. We've got to focus on the fact, and it is a fact, that abortion methods are violent. I mean, when you dismember a child, we know beginning at least 15 weeks onward, they feel excruciating pain. They suffer. And after that, and the evidence is overwhelming that they suffer. That's why the Pain Capable Unborn Child Protection Act has a series of findings, scientific, that they feel pain. The heartbeat starts really early, but by about 6 or 7 weeks, it is pumping strong. All the body systems are in the process of being working. It's a child. It's not a choice.
Congressman, thank you for all you do. Let's get you back to talk about your trafficking bill, because that's another big thing.
Great. I'd love it.
We know it spikes around the Super Bowl, but boy, it's an epidemic as well. God bless you.
Hey, like what you just heard? Then share it with your family and friends. And thanks for listening.